Well, free legal advice could be harder to come by as a looming lawyer exodus threatens the legal aid system. Legal Aid Australia says a lack of government funding is leaving struggling families to bear the brunt, while private sector lawyers argue they're paid a third of what they can earn from other legal cases. Katherine McKernan is the Executive Director of National Legal Aid, and she joins us now in the studio. Katherine, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Can you briefly explain just how legal aid is provided in Australia, how it's funded, and who really provides the bulk of representations?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it's good to think of legal aid like bulk billing GPs, in that we have suburban and regional lawyers who provide criminal representation and family law representation to the really most in need people in Australia. People, over 3/4 of our service is delivered by local lawyers, and what the survey found was that they're in very, very small law firms. They're mostly women, and they're really connected to their communities. And they enjoy providing representation for people in parenting orders, care and protection, domestic and family violence, and of course criminal law.
And the research that you're referring to is the census that was done in 2024 but only released this year, just a couple of weeks ago in February. So the heavy lifting is being done by private practice, but how is legal aid funded?
Yeah, so the heavy lifting is done by those in private practice, but they're funded through a mix of state and territory government funding, which largely funds the criminal law aspect of the work, and then the Commonwealth government funds the family law aspect of the work, and that's about 30% of all the work that we do.
Okay, so what do you know about claims that there could be a looming mass exodus of these private lawyers leaving the space, leaving the legal aid space? What do you know about that? Their claim is that they earn about a third in that space as opposed to what they could earn doing other legal work.
Yeah, sure. So the census surveyed over 1,000 of the lawyers that do the work across Australia, and whilst they did indicate that they really enjoyed the work, what we found was around 10% are planning to leave in the next 12 months, and we're looking at more than a third leaving in the next 5 years. And what that means is that local communities will really struggle to have legal aid lawyers available. We already see lawyers travelling more than 200 kilometres to represent a client, and what it'll mean is that it will take longer to find lawyers for people, which will slow the court processes down, but it also means in some cases that people have to represent themselves whilst we try and find lawyers.
And the ramifications of that?
The ramifications of that is people make decisions in family law, for example, that may not be in their best interests or in the best interests of their children. Most of the work that we do is unfortunately in domestic and family violence, and so what that might mean is that people may make arrangements that aren't really putting the safety or the best interests of the children first, which then results in very dangerous situations in some cases, but also further access to other services and so on. So that's what we're looking at.
So what are some of the solutions? Because I'm hearing it's a pay issue for private lawyers, but what other mechanisms are there that could put more lawyers into the public work that legal aid does?
Yeah, I mean, the survey was really, as I said, positive about the work, and so it's not a question of people not being available to do it. The issue is actually the low fees. So the easiest solution is providing more funding to legal aid so that we can raise the fees. We're calling on attorneys general across the country to really just to conduct a review of the fees and the grants. This has happened in the UK. It's underway at the moment. And look, it hasn't changed for almost 20 years, so we're really just asking to have a look at this and look at what's possible in terms of trying to maintain the system.
And it's a federal election year, what sort of pressure will you be putting on the Attorneys General with respect to this? And how does actually Australia rate to international counterparts when it comes to pay in this sector?
Yeah, I mean, I think the UK is another large provider of legal aid, and it's unfortunately a very similar story. There's been very low increases or no increases of fees in the UK and Australia. What we're hoping, I guess, through the federal election is it doesn't actually cost that much to enable us to increase the fees. We're asking for an additional $30 million a year from the Commonwealth government to allow us to raise the family law fees. So we're really focusing on that, and then post-election looking to work with all the Attorneys General across the country.
And you're hoping that will then perhaps retain younger lawyers in this space, because one might think that perhaps older lawyers that have been working for a couple of decades that are looking to step down a little bit, perhaps they own their home, they have a nice lifestyle, go into that work. Is that a common scenario?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most of the lawyers doing the work have been doing it for more than 10 years. So we are looking at a cliff, and we do need to encourage younger lawyers to do the work. What the survey showed, though, is that they're under a lot of pressure from their firms to bill and to make earn money. And so our work is often quite complex and takes time, and the funding isn't there to really justify that. So we're looking at the younger lawyers who want to do the work, but they're not being encouraged to because it's just not making ends meet.
Katherine McKernan, Executive Director of National